Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Tonight's story. It doesn't begin with heartbreak. It begins with shrimp skewers, LED spotlights, and a glass of flat champagne I never touched. I stood at the center of the room I built with my own exhaustion, pressed suit, printed agenda, every handshake rehearsed, and she didn't even look up. Not once. The band was playing some slow jazz number no one asked for, and my wife was twirling her necklace, staring across the room like I was the background hum of an air conditioner, just there, forgettable. She wasn't always like that. But tonight, she didn't arrive with me. She arrived for the party. There was a moment, maybe 10 minutes in, when I thought she might wander over. I even turned slightly, opened my stance like I'd seen in body language videos. She didn't move. Just smiled at someone behind me. And kept sipping. It was my event. My name on the banner. My speech opening the night. And yet she acted like she'd been dragged to a coworker's birthday at Applebee's. The moment that did it, the exact second the air changed, was when I stepped up to introduce the keynote speaker and looked down from the stage. There she was, head tilted, legs crossed, laughing at something a man in a navy pinstripe just whispered in her ear. She never laughs like that at home. The applause started. I was supposed to speak. I said the first line of my introduction, just like we rehearsed in the mirror the night before. But my voice cracked halfway through the second sentence. No one noticed. No one cared. And I looked at the exit sign. Bright red. Mocking me. No drama. No noise. I left the mic mid-sentence. I didn't even take my glass. While they clapped for the speaker, I walked straight past the floral arrangements, past the silent valet, past everything I'd built that night. No one followed me. No one called my name. Especially not her. And when she finally did realize I was gone. Well. That's where things started to unravel. By the time I reached the parking garage, the night air had already sucked the warmth from my suit. I stood there staring at my car, locked, lights blinking, and didn't even unlock it. I just sat on the cold concrete ledge next to it. Shoes pinching, collar too tight, heart somewhere between rage and resignation. No texts. No calls. Not even a, "Where are you?" from the one person who should have noticed I left mid-sentence. My own wife, the one who watched me plan that event for 6 weeks straight, didn't even blink. I stayed there for 40 minutes. At some point, I pulled off the name tag that said Logistics Director, and dropped it on the ground like it was someone else's life. The ridiculous part. I kept rehearsing her reaction in my head, as if I was still hoping she'd call, act worried, come rushing out with her heels in one hand and guilt all over her face. But the screen stayed dark. Eventually, I drove. Not home. Just drove. Past our street. Past the hotel I'd booked for us to celebrate. Past everything. I ended up in a 24-hour laundromat on the edge of town. Don't ask why. Maybe because it smelled like detergent and didn't expect anything from me. I sat in a plastic chair next to a flickering vending machine and finally checked my phone. One message. Still networking. You disappeared. That was it. No concern. No surprise. Just casual indifference, like I'd wandered off at a grocery store and she'd already moved on to a new aisle. I didn't answer. I just stared at it. The message sat there, taunting me in gray bubbles. The next hour was a blur. I kept picturing her laugh. The way she leaned toward that guy. The fact that she'd shown up looking like a guest, not a partner. And worst of all, how easy it was for her to forget I was even part of the night. You know what no one tells you? It's not the screaming matches or broken plates that break a marriage. It's when one person stops noticing that the other is disappearing right in front of them. By the time she finally called, well past midnight, I'd already booked a room at a roadside inn with flickering hallway lights and curtains that didn't close right. I didn't answer her call. I let it ring out. I lay on that scratchy bedspread, staring at the popcorn ceiling, wondering when I'd become this pathetic, invisible version of myself. And worse, when she stopped caring. At 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed against the nightstand of that cheap motel like it owed me something. I didn't reach for it. I just stared at the crusted ceiling, listening to the muffled sound of a semi-truck rumbling down the highway outside. My dress shirt was still crumpled on the floor, shoes still on, one laced, one loose. I hadn't slept, just lay there all night wondering if I'd really done it. If I'd really walked out and let her notice on her own for once. Eventually, I looked. 9 missed calls. 4 texts. None said, "I'm sorry." None said, "I was wrong." They all read like a woman inconvenienced by a missing umbrella, not a missing husband. "You left. Are you serious right now? I had to explain to people you were sick or something. Can we just talk?" Talk. About what? About how she managed to make my night feel like her obligation. About how she floated from one cocktail to the next like I didn't exist. I didn't respond. I sat up, staring at myself in the mirror across the motel room. Eyes bloodshot, collarbone sharper than I remembered, skin pale under the flickering fluorescent light. I looked like a placeholder for someone else's husband. Like a cardboard cutout left behind for appearances. Around 9 o'clock, I finally got in the car. I didn't drive home. I didn't even feel like I had one anymore. Instead, I stopped at the park across from our condo and just sat. The same park where we once picnicked with matching mugs and laughed about how people actually grow apart. That was a joke to us. Until it wasn't. That's when I saw her car. Pulling into the lot. Fast. Erratic. She got out still in heels, hair messy, makeup smudged. She looked around like someone trying to spot a runaway child. She didn't see me. I didn't move. She stood there on the curb for a minute, staring at the building. Then she pulled out her phone again. She looked annoyed, like I was the one who'd embarrassed her. And it hit me, she wasn't worried. She was angry. Angry I'd taken back my silence. That I didn't play the obedient character who shrinks so she can shine. She paced for a bit, then got back in the car and drove off without even checking the park. I sat there until the sun burned through the windshield, letting the heat settle over me like a slow truth I'd been avoiding for too long. I wasn't coming home. And she wasn't coming for me. That afternoon, I finally turned my phone back on. A part of me expected chaos. Dozens of missed calls. Apologies. Something human. But instead, I found one new voicemail, left at 1:13 p.m., and it was so calm, so hollow, it almost made me laugh. "Oliver, I don't know where you went last night, and honestly, I think that was a little dramatic. I'm not trying to argue. I just want to come home and talk like adults. Can you stop making this into something bigger than it is?" Bigger than it is? She hadn't even realized it was already big. That night wasn't the start of the problem, it was the final page of a book I'd been writing alone for 2 years. And still, even in her so-called effort to talk, she made it sound like I'd overreacted to a spilled drink. I didn't call her back. Instead, I checked into a short-term rental downtown, bare brick walls, one creaky chair, a bed too firm to pretend you're okay on. It was quiet. That strange kind of silence that doesn't ask anything of you. I needed it. Around 6 p.m., she texted again. "I'm outside the apartment. Can we just talk?" But I wasn't there. I didn't respond. I waited to see if she'd figure that out. 3 hours later, she sent another message. "So now you're punishing me by disappearing? What exactly do you want from me?" She still didn't get it. She thought this was a punishment. Like I was sulking. Like I wanted a better apology or more dramatic guilt. But I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. I just stopped showing up. Not out of spite. Just out of pure emotional exhaustion. You can only whisper, "I'm still here," into a void so many times before you finally realize no one is echoing it back. At 11:22 p.m., I watched her from across the street. She was standing outside our building again, pacing. Holding her phone in one hand, the other gripping her elbow the way she did when she was nervous. She looked frustrated. Impatient. Not broken. Not scared to lose me. Just annoyed that she didn't have control of the story. Eventually, she got in her car and drove off. I stood there for another 10 minutes before walking back to my temporary apartment. My inbox had 3 work emails. 2 store coupons. And nothing from her after that. That was the moment I realized something important. She didn't miss me. She missed the version of me that showed up when she needed a +1, a handyman, a safe bet. But not me. Not the person I actually was beneath all the quiet loyalty. And I wasn't going to be that version anymore. 2 days passed before I said a word to her again. Not because I was playing a game, but because I genuinely didn't know what to say anymore. Every message I could have sent felt small compared to how invisible she made me feel. And somehow, the longer I stayed gone, the clearer things became. I wasn't punishing her. I was just freeing myself. On the 3rd morning, I returned to the condo while she was at work. I still had my key. The place looked untouched, like the energy had drained out of the walls. I walked around the kitchen like I was visiting a museum of a marriage, 2 mugs still in the sink, a pair of her heels by the couch, the old blanket we never folded draped over the back of the chair. Everything was where it had always been, and yet it all felt like it didn't belong to me anymore. I gathered some clothes, my work laptop, and one framed photo from the hallway, us in Boston, 4 years ago, before everything started to feel scheduled. I took it more out of confusion than sentiment. I think I just needed to remind myself that part of our life was once real. Then, I did something I never imagined I'd do. I called a locksmith. He was quiet. Polite. Didn't ask questions. Within 20 minutes, the locks were changed. New keys in my hand. I left them on the kitchen counter next to a note. "You don't need to call. I'll be in touch when I'm ready." That evening, the calls came in waves. Missed call. Text. Another call. Then a voice message filled with confused panic. Not sadness, panic. The kind that comes when someone realizes they don't control the tempo anymore. She kept asking why. Accusing me of being extreme. Saying I was running away from a conversation like a child. That last one nearly made me laugh. Because I had spent years trying to have that conversation. Years of quiet comments, soft questions, evenings trying to pull her attention away from her phone, her shows, her disinterest. I wasn't running now, I was finally sitting down, just not across from her. The last message that night was short. "You've changed. This isn't you." And she was right. I had changed. I had finally stopped hoping she'd notice I was drowning and started learning how to swim on my own. The silence didn't last long. When she realized I wasn't answering, she activated a different strategy: delegation. Suddenly, her friends, the same ones who barely looked at me during double dates, started sending me, just checking in, texts as if they'd always cared. First it was Elise, her yoga buddy, who said Kendra was worried sick and confused by my behavior. Then came Mel, her coworker, who casually asked if I was okay mentally, and hinted that I was throwing away something solid. None of them asked what actually happened. No one asked how I felt. They didn't know about the event. They didn't know she laughed with another man while I spoke on stage, or how I walked out and no one followed. They just assumed the version she told them: I cracked under pressure, overreacted, and went AWOL like some moody teenager. I didn't answer them. Not out of spite. But because the more people tried to minimize what happened, the more certain I became that no one really sees the slow erosion. No one notices when affection turns to tolerance. When smiles become curt nods. When you go from being a husband to being conveniently silent background noise. A week passed. I focused on work. I slept a little better. Ate a little less. Caught myself checking my phone like a ghost limb still twitching. But I didn't reach out. I didn't cave. Then, one evening, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. "She's breaking. You should talk to her. This isn't like her." That stopped me. It wasn't a friend. It was her brother, Nolan. We weren't close, but we talked at holidays. He was never the emotional type. For him to reach out meant something had cracked. I stared at the message for 20 minutes. Was she finally realizing I was serious? Or was this just more theatrics to pull me back into orbit? I didn't know. But for the first time since the night of the event, I actually wanted to know. Not because I wanted to be comforted. But because I needed to see, face to face, whether she regretted losing me, or just regretted losing control. So I replied. "Tomorrow. 1 hour. Neutral place. No emojis. No softness. Just clarity." I was ready to see what she had to say. But I already knew, this wasn't going to be a reconciliation. It was going to be a reckoning. We met at a small cafe tucked behind a bookstore, neutral, quiet, anonymous. I chose it because she wouldn't expect it. Kendra always preferred shiny places, places where people wore heels even on weekdays and sipped wine pretending it wasn't Tuesday. This place smelled like old paperbacks and burnt espresso. It felt honest. She walked in exactly on time. That surprised me. She wore the navy coat I bought her 2 winters ago, the one she never liked but kept, just in case. Her eyes scanned the room like she wasn't sure whether to be angry, apologetic, or somewhere in between. I didn't stand up when she approached. I didn't smile either. Just nodded toward the seat across from me. She sat down slowly, folding her hands in front of her like we were in a job interview. There was a long pause before either of us spoke. She broke it first. "I didn't come here to fight," she said, voice low but rehearsed. "Good," I replied, "because I'm not here to lose one." That set the tone. She started with the usual phrases, "We've both made mistakes, this doesn't have to get ugly, I never meant to hurt you." All vague. All passive. As if the past 2 years had just happened to us, like bad weather instead of choices made repeatedly. I let her speak. I didn't interrupt. I just watched her eyes. She wasn't crying. She wasn't breaking. She was negotiating. "I didn't know you felt so abandoned," she finally said. I laughed once, quietly. "You didn't notice I left your event until nearly midnight." "That's not fair," she snapped, and for a second, the real Kendra slipped out. "I had work people to talk to. I thought you understood that." I leaned forward slightly, tired of the game. "I gave a speech at my own event, Kendra. You were laughing with someone else while I thanked you publicly from the stage. You weren't networking. You were checked out." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her gaze dropped. And for the first time, I saw something that looked like discomfort, but not regret. "I didn't cheat," she said suddenly, like it was some moral victory. "I know," I replied. "You didn't need to. I was already alone." That landed. The silence between us became heavy, too full to break easily. She reached for her coffee and missed the handle. Her hand trembled slightly. "I thought we'd fix this," she whispered. "Eventually." "We're not broken," I said. "You just stopped showing up. And I finally followed your lead." She blinked. That was the first time I saw her lose composure. We didn't finish our drinks. We didn't hug goodbye. No tearful apologies or big movie scene monologues. Just two people realizing that whatever they'd built had quietly collapsed while they were too busy pretending it was still standing. I left the cafe without looking back. And she didn't chase me. It's strange how peace doesn't arrive like thunder, it settles in like morning fog. Quiet. Gentle. I thought leaving Kendra would feel like a crash, some dramatic finale filled with yelling or tears. But it didn't. It felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for too many years. 2 weeks after that cafe meeting, I finalized the move into a small loft near the river. Nothing fancy. Exposed beams, crooked floorboards, a view of the water when the light hits just right. It's mine. Every inch of it feels earned. I bought a used couch, built a cheap dining table from a YouTube tutorial, and for the first time in ages, I started cooking meals that didn't come from frozen boxes. She texted once more. Just one word, why? I didn't respond. Not out of pettiness. But because there's no simple answer to that question. The truth is, there wasn't one moment. It was thousands of tiny moments stacked on top of each other, the sighs, the dismissals, the laughs she gave to everyone else but me. She didn't destroy our marriage. She just let it rot quietly. And I had stayed too long hoping for a spark that never came back. Now, I spend my evenings walking the trails by the water. I read more. I call my sister more often. I even started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. The world feels wider than it did before. I feel possible again. I'm not bitter. I don't hate her. I hope she figures out whatever she was chasing in all those rooms where I was invisible. I truly do. But me? I'm done disappearing for people who don't notice when I'm gone. To those watching this, if you've ever felt like a ghost in your own life, I promise you, stepping out of that silence isn't the end. It's the beginning. Thanks for being here on Reddit Confessions. Now it's your turn. Have you ever lived through a moment in history that changed the course of your life, even in a quiet way? Tell us in the comments. We read every one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own stories. We're here. We're listening. And you're not invisible anymore.